control the vertigo.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Today we are covering how should I put this? A kind of spin-off of an already existing property. It's called Tales from the Cryptkeeper. Can you guess which series it's spun off from? It's spun off from Tales from the Crypt. This was intended to be an animated sort of horror anthology series specifically for children. It's aimed at children. The animation style is kind of what you'd expect, kind of late 80s, kind of early 90s kind of TV animation, like Scooby-Doo is probably what we're talking about. So this one was made by the Canadian studio Nelvana and broadcast in Canada and broadcast on ABC in the US and broadcast on ITV in the UK. Tales from the Cryptkeeper, there were in all 3 seasons, 13 episodes per season, 39 episodes, basically based on stories from the Tales from the Crypt comic book series and somewhat on the live action TV series. Now, the live action TV series is very adult in content, right? Not suitable for children whatsoever, really. Whereas Tales from the Crypt it's milder. There's no profanity, no sexual content, no blood, no gore. Scary, but not gory. Scooby-Doo kind of stuff is what we're talking about. Most of the episodes are set in the same place, which was named in episode 10 as called Gravenhurst. And it's interesting that the Crypt Keeper here is voiced by the same Crypt Keeper we use for in Tales from the Crypt, John Corsier. It's a very familiar voice and making his usual horrific puns. Horrific in many senses, I should say. Pretty terrible puns. And this one starts with him talking about his vacation snaps, and he's going to various places where certain words they're puns on existing play. I can't remember any, but they've just plays on words around place names to put in some sort of more gory, horrific, ghostly element. That's the kind of thing he's showing snaps. And this first episode is called While the Cat's Away. It was indeed based on an existing comic called a story called While the Cat's Away, same as this episode, from the Vault of Horror, issue 34. Now, I have to talk about the opening credits because they're separate from the story. Now, interesting, it starts with a kid kind of running and being scared, and various monsters keep popping up and scaring the kid further and further into this old spooky house. Vampires, werewolves, mummies, zombies, all of that. But it then ends with the kid falling on a sofa and being given popcorn and sitting with the monsters, and they're all watching TV, pressing the remote to watch the TV. And that's how it starts. It's kind of cool. And it starts with the Crypt Keeper telling us about, introducing to this story. Right, so the story is a fairly simple one. These are only 20-minute episodes, so it's a fairly simple one. 2 brothers, an older and a younger one. Now, the older brother looks very much like, is it Buzz, the older brother of Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone? Looks very much like him. And that's it. I should say this episode first aired on September the 18th, 1993. So they're talking about they've got a dad who's like a travel agent, trying to get rich people to sort of go on holidays and spend lots of money and buy his packages. They go and talk to him, but he's not interested. The younger one wants this fancy bike thing, fancy bike. But the older one, who's kind of overhears that this rich guy is going on holiday and won't be at his house. And he starts saying, nah, should we just get the bike ourselves? Basically, they're going to steal. Young brother's not sure, but the older one sort of bamboos, bullies, basically. Bullies him into going along with it, and they're going to break into this guy's house and steal something, which will then pay for the bike, apparently. That's the idea. Anyway, they start to break into the house, but weird stuff starts happening. They get chased in by bats. That's the first thing. And then more and more monsters kind of appear and scare them. It's a bit like the opening credits, frankly. But this goes on. But the older brother's like, wow, if he's laying all this protection on, there must be something really good. And that they kind of get deeper into the house, more spooky things happen. There really isn't much to say about this. It's a really lightweight kind of story. Though it keeps up its pace and it's fine. That 20 minutes shoots by, really. And finally they get into the very final thing and they find it like a chest. And they think, wow, whatever's in it must be super valuable. And they open up and it's a single comic, a Tales from the Crypt comic. And this is, well, it is issue 1. That must be worth something. And then they realise that they are on the front cover. It's them. Their story, what they've just gone through, is the first story in the first edition of this comic. And then it kind of ends and the Cryptkeeper says, do you think people stealing, did they get their comeuppance? Should they? And all of this. So yeah, basically, kind of Home Alone. I already mentioned Home Alone. Basically, they keep hitting things to put them off, but that makes them more convinced that it's worth stealing. While the younger one's constantly saying, "We gotta get out of here," and all of this. It's for children, That's what it is. It was kind of fun. Didn't mind it at all. Now, this aired. The first 2 seasons actually aired. 1993 and 1994. Then there was quite the long break, and the third season didn't air until 1999. There was 5 years between the second and third season. Presumably they discontinued, but they decided to pick up again. Though the third season did air on CBS instead of ABC. And it's nice that John Kassir was involved. I quite like that. And there was a fairly long list of voice artists involved. No particular names jump out on me as worth mentioning, though, there's a lot of talent, I imagine. But the animation was a simple affair, really. Season 1 was mostly the Crypt Keeper just talking, but apparently in the second season they introduced rivals. Basically, there are other horror hosts in the AC Comics thing. There's the Vault Keeper and the Old Witch, and they're constantly sort of bickering and getting on with it. It has to be said, season 3, I did mention it, 5 years later, it was presented as the new Tales of the Crypt Keeper. And apparently, Crypt Keeper was kind of more involved in some of those stories, like setting up situations to teach lessons. These are simple morality tales, bits like fables and so on. It's that kind of thing with a horror bent. So it was fine. It was okay. And some of those comics, when you go back, some of the stories are fairly PG. Some of them are horrible in the comics. Some of them are proper adult, really level kind of things happening. But, they stick clear of that, obviously, for this, as it was for children. So, yeah, an interesting one. Obviously, Tales from the Crypt superior in many ways, but this is okay for kiddies, right? Interestingly, the third series, the new Tales from the Crypt, aired after Tales from the Crypt had stopped airing. Tales from the Crypt went from 1989 to 1996, so it's kind of interesting that Tales from the Crypt appeared 3 years after it finished in 1999. But still using John Kassir, which is good news. So I think that's about all I wish to say about this particular anthology series. But before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to